black more, black more, black more, black more, black more, black more. What is up, everybody? My name is James D. Fiore, and this is Blackballed. There has been a political divide in this country. This is not news. It's been happening for a long time. And I'm going to try to coin a phrase, maybe. Maybe it's already been coined. The unhinged fringe. It's an ambiguous enough term to be describing either side. And before anyone starts talking about false equivalencies, we need to stop comparing things like that, because we end up in this all or nothing game where both sides come to the conclusion that the ends justify the means. And sometimes it is really good to put a spotlight on these types of phenomenon as it happens in our politics, because we need to understand that polarization is also a disease, and it's not good to think that your side is righteous enough to break the rules that you point to the other side as breaking. And there is a person that I know that is a steadfast documentarian of this phenomenon, and she is my guest today. And her name is Karima Sup. Hi, Karima. Oh. How are you?
Hello. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. What's really interesting is that my battery signal just went, and if I don't run and get my cord right now, we're gonna lose the live stream. So what I'm gonna do is put you totally on the spot. Right? And make you talk for like 18 seconds. You ready?
Okay.
Okay, go.
Well, that's a great hosting job. Once again, James. Hi, everybody. So today, I'd like to set the record straight a little bit because there has been some online confusion, drama that spills into real life, and I am fed up. So we're going to be going through what could be evidence in a courtroom at some point in time, but instead we're going to hash it out here and go through it calmly, rationally, with a bit of nuance, and see where that takes us. Okay? Well
done, Karima. I think that me. By the way, I'm out of breath. And not only did I have to run to the bedroom to get it.
No, it's okay. I could have.
No, don't be sorry. It's my fault. But I had to do it in a way where it's a hardwood floor. I had to sort of drag run my feet because my kids are sleeping.
Are you wearing socks, or was that barefoot?
I am. It was like, do you remember Tom Cruise, Risky Business, when he slid across the floor and he's like, "Take those old records off the shelf"? Well, that was me, except I was wearing pants.
I was not until just before the show.
Oh, well done. You know who does that? Glenn Greenwald.
Oh, great. Now they're going to be comparing me to Glenn Greenwald. James.
Listen, I think Glenn Greenwald is getting a bad rep. I don't think he's a Russian asset.
There are insightful
those terms.
It's sort of to consider stuff on its merit, right? It's too much of a shortcut, I think, to not actually entertain ideas, and that's a big part of kind of issues. This idea of association is enough to smear someone. Having a thought or discussing it is enough to discard, right?
It's the having the thought one. So there's a lot of guys like Glenn Greenwald. Matt Taibbi is starting to get this treatment too. And any of those journalists that were from the left that might do something like mention that there is an oligarch in the Ukraine that basically gave Zelensky his political career by putting him on a show and funding his campaigns, right? This exists. But if you talk about that, they're like, and how they determine people like Greenwald and to a lesser extent Taibbi are Russian assets is if they report on the same things that Russian state TV reports on, even if they're true, they count that as a piece of evidence to put on the scale of being a possible Russian asset. It's just like, what?
I'm quite unplugged from that particular scene. So it's interesting that sort of the same phenomenon plays out in different circles, and it's, you know, different people involved, but patterns.
Yeah, and that's why we wanted to have you on the show today. So first of all, while I start loading up videos here, tell me where you were the last couple of days, and I'm going to lead with the video that we looked at before we went on air because I need to set the scene for what's happening and who's doing it. But where were you this weekend? And give me sort of like a quick synopsis.
Sure. So I spent yesterday in Peterborough, Ontario. It is a city that I have visited fairly often over the past couple of years. It's been something of a hotbed of interesting polarized activity, including anti-mask, anti-vax stuff, resistance against public health measures. There was a bit of a QAnon showing where a mass citizens' arrest on the police force was attempted. And what's interesting is that in all of these events, it is a mix of local energy, but also a lot of outside forces. And in January, the latest attraction in Peterborough was the public library, where a protest was organized against drag storytime. And some of the individuals involved in this protest are of the freedom movement, but their most recent fixation is drag shows. And it's become a cultural flashpoint, not just for the Ontario crew, but across the country and indeed North America. So at that last event in January, I attended, as I normally do, but I got a bizarre reception from a subset of counter protesters who seemed to be more preoccupied about my presence than the protesters, and who set out really to block my path, prevent me from doing what I came to do. And yesterday, there was another drag story time in Peterborough. And, you know, I wanted to take a different approach. So in the lead up to this event, I had interviews with who I would consider to be the authorities in that community. So I spoke with the drag performer herself, the venue host, the CEO of the library, and the mayor of Peterborough, trying to understand their perspective on these events, these demonstrations, and the energy that it attracts to the city and what they hope to see. So at this event, and I'm nearly done my synopsis here, but at this event, I recognized some familiar faces, people who I've seen counter-protesting other drag events in Brockville, in Ottawa, and they too sort of picked up this torch or this mantle of wanting to surveil me and police my presence and existence. And there's an irony to that because I actually don't think that their behavior is all that kosher at these events, whereas I stand by everything I say and do. So I think maybe that is the lead in, James.
Yeah, no, and that's that's fair. It always amazes me that people look through that lens of just being right. And I can't remember who said it, but there's a historical adage that goes something like, people are more concerned about being right than being effective. And it's interesting because the whole ends justifies the means thing. Sometimes even our media is a little bit like too kid glovish on certain things. So I'm going to play a clip here, and I'm playing this clip because the whole thing about surveillance. This is the person, and you'll see her because she has the megaphone. This is the person that feels like she is qualified to surveil and I guess try to make you behave. I think her words are like, we're just making sure that Kareem is behaving. So the person with the megaphone in this clip is the one that's making sure that other people are behaving.
Get on our case today.
Those divisions were on display.
Hey, come here.
Counter-protester clashed with a member of OIG.
A big bunch of whiny babies who threw a mega tantrum last year in our city.
There's so many funny things of it. Like that was what, a 16-second clip, and there's so many things about it that like right just a rank. So first of all, I'm just going to play it again because it was really quick. And if you just, she nails the guy in the face with her megaphone.
Drink it in, man. Drink it in.
Yeah. And but the reporter, the person doing voiceover reporting is like, protesters and counter protesters clashed. I'm pretty sure a counter protester, because that's what she is, right? She's there to make sure drag queen story time goes well, right? That's
this
her.
this was the 1 year anniversary of the Freedom Convoy. So
okay. So she was a counter protester in this one.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
I think she was counter protesting them celebrating the 1 year anniversary of the convoy.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to play it again because I think it's worth seeing the person who, again, believes that she's qualified to make sure that some other people behave, including you.
Been on our case since
Those divisions were on display.
Hey, come here.
Were on display.
Hey, come here.
At display.
Hey,
Display.
come here.
Display.
That's only one of the
A
assaults
counter
we had that
protester
day, by the
clashed
way.
with a member of the Freedom Convoy.
I mean,
That was the second.
okay.
That was the second incident. She had already been
threw a
removed
mega
from the
tantrum
hill at
last
that
year
point
in
for
our-
whacking another woman in the face with her megaphone.
Right. And then she's saying, these people here they're just throwing mega tantrums. Chick, you are hitting people in the face with your megaphone. Like and I know listen, this is one of those, this is an offspring, in my opinion, of Punch a Nazi. Because it was, and this is how stupid people are. This is how dumb people are now. So if people are like, punch a Nazi, supporters of that are like, how could you ever disagree with punching a Nazi? And it's just like, well, how about for starters, some people call other people Nazis when maybe they're not Nazis, right? And so people feel empowered to go and assault people because they have placed the Nazi label on them. Meanwhile, these people are probably gamers. They eat chips a lot. I don't know. Maybe even if they are bad people, you can't just go around assaulting people. Like this is not what people do, right? Like
it negates the fundamental sort of social contract. And, I sort of understand how that attitude came about because in many ways the social contract is broken. And so a reaction or an instinct to that is, to be that vigilante, but it is playing pretend because it's a lot of rhetoric and it can translate into actual scenes. But as you point out, there's no real measure, right? And I've been called a Nazi by both freedom supporters and people who I would dub Antifo. So, I've had that label applied to me by seemingly opposite ends of the political spectrum. I wrote a thread today about the guy who screamed at Trudeau during that, whether it was a rally or a vigil, I don't know. And, Trudeau yelled back and it was kind of a funny clip. Anyway, but I've been following this individual as part of the Queen's Park movement for many, many months. And to see the term Nazi applied because they've interacted with problematic politicians who, are having various claims to ascendancy. So the idea that everyone kind of knows everything about it's just these lazy shortcuts. And I think it's irresponsible. I think it is a form of minimizing the Holocaust. If these words are so loosely applied, it's dangerous.
Yeah. And so this person who was not brave enough to leave their real name, I bet, is
That's
like
John Thibault.
That's who?
John Thibault from
I don't
Yarmouth.
know who that is. Okay, well, listen, John. If there are Nazis at a table and Derek sits down, I guess is Derek the guy that got hit?
No, Derek is the guy who yelled at the Prime Minister. Sorry, I'm mixing stories here.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know if he's a Nazi. He's an asshole, but I don't know if he's a Nazi. Right? There are 11 Nazis. If Derek sits down, there's 11 Nazis at the table. If Karim is there recording history, there are 12 Nazis in the room altogether. I mean, it is so fundamentally stupid. John, what is his name? John Thibault?
Yeah.
A stupid human being. I wrote a piece today, okay, about that term being thrown around. And I mean, how it not only debases the conversation when a person is not a Nazi, and clearly you are not a Nazi, right? This is this. It takes a special kind of stupid to think that you're a Nazi, and the idea that you can just hoist that label on somebody willy-nilly because they don't do what you want them to do, not because of their actual beliefs, not because of what they actually do. I'm pretty sure you don't support genocide. I'm pretty sure you're not a bigot. I'm pretty sure you're not a person who wants to dehumanize other people. The interesting thing about this, and this happened when you were on with Taro, Danny Taro, it was like the idea that you're even there in the first place is all they need. And so the person that you sent me, and I'm going to send it into the chat and I'll play a little bit of it, but you sent me like, it's a 25-minute clip of the person that we just saw strike that other person with a megaphone, surveilling you. And it's not, you know, is it subjective? Are you sure? Objective reality says that she was surveilling you because she said she was surveilling. I'm here to keep an eye on Karima. This is the Karima cam, is basically what she said. And the person that was doing that, do you remember the one that hit the person with the megaphone, is this person.
So proud for transporting children. Austin, you're disgusting. You're full of hate. You're a bitch. Go away. You're disgusting. You're full of hate. You're a
That's her kid, by the way. That's her child. They're watching mom. First of all, the most offensive thing about this clip is that she's rapping. I find that highly offensive. You know, I don't think that's a good way to get a point across. And yeah, we'll finish the clip. Look at the daughter. The daughter, I feel bad for her. I feel like we shouldn't even freeze this. Anyway.
Look how you're asking for my child. I'm not the one swearing in front of a child. Crystal, full of hate. Crystal, go away. Look at this. What about the children?
Yeah, I know.
What about the
They failed to see what's right there in front of them. This is child pornography.
Shake your booty on your way out.
I just want to, just for a sec, I really like know what that book is. I'm assuming it's some sort of children's book. And
Yeah.
I guess
Yeah.
the problem that they have with it, and listen, I don't want to get into a big thing about the drag queen story time. I support any type of reading to kids. I don't really care, but I don't support burlesque Boy Scout story time. I think that anyone can read to kids, but I think there should be some sort of dress code in effect. That's all. You know what I mean? Dress up as a teddy bear, that's fine. Dress up as like something like, you know, jeans and a t-shirt, sure. Go ahead. Stockings, pumps, and a mini skirt seems a little excessive for kids, but I don't know. I hate that whole debate because I feel like 30 years ago, if someone said drag queens reading books to kids, they probably would have said, "Oh, that's very strange," because drag queens are after-hours nightclub performances. It just seems weird. But at the same time, I don't really care who reads stories to kids. But if a party girl comes up and she's just gendered female and she's wearing scantily clad clothes, I don't think she should read to kids either. So everyone always makes it seem like it's an anti-drag queen thing, and really it's just like, as long as you're appropriately dressed, I think it's fine, you know, because it's a story time for little children. But anyways, that's just
And can I just add to this for a second, Jay?
yeah. Go ahead. Actually, we don't need to see the rest of that. She just continues to do
It's
that.
the
So,
same,
anyways.
yeah. All of the drag story times that I have seen and attended and have had these protests outside, there is nothing even remotely questionable. So it's fitting exactly what you described, which is someone in costume
Good.
reading to children, and you know it is typically about inclusivity, like the origins of drag story time. The reason that this was created was intended to for children of LGBTQ plus parents, and meant to provide an opportunity where they could come in with their kid, have sort of age appropriate representations of themselves, of their families. That is the intent behind it. And when people show up to protest, it really gets conflated with a lot of other issues and concepts and images taken from other local events things seeping in from the States. So that I think then becomes sort of a fundamental point of conflict. But when I talked to the library CEO today, yesterday, she really did a good job explaining how this type of programming is, it's clearly age appropriate from what I've seen of all of these events, because the focus isn't on drag. Drag is costume, it's part of it, but the real focus is the story time. Brunches are, I think, a separate issue, and that's maybe what comes to mind where it is sexy. There's nothing sexy about the story time, and I just want to make that clear.
Yeah, no, that's the way it should be. I see people in the comments trying to drag me a little bit.
Oh no,
I am not saying that the common drag queen story time is scantily clad, and I hate being polarized because that people hear that and they're like, oh, what do you mean? You're trying to say that they're whores and predators? No, I just said what I said. I think if you're going to read to kids, you shouldn't be scantily clad. If 95% of drag queen story time is not people dressed inappropriately, I am for that. I am, even if it's anecdotal examples, I don't subscribe to this idea where it's like, James, if you talk about it at all, you're just giving ammo to the other side. Fuck you. I don't give a shit. I'm not Switzerland. I am just saying, like, I'm allowed to talk, and so is everyone else. And hear what I say, not what I'm not saying, right? And I think that everyone needs to start doing that. And especially in your case, Karima, because they can't point to anything that you say. You just show up and document, and if they're like, you're not on our team, well then fuck you, you're a fascist. And that's the shit that I think is really like we saw that with the last time that we were on with Danny Taro, that I asked him, I'm like, he's like, why was he kept on saying things like, why was she even there in the first place? And I'm like, that's an irrelevant question. It doesn't matter why she was there in the first place. It just so happens that she was there to document the event.
Can I explain why I do go? Because I think that maybe that will help people. I have always been inquisitive. I have been asking questions, since I was born. It is a defining characteristic of who I am. I look for nuance. I look for understanding, for answers, for the discomfort that is inherent to posing questions and trying to learn and uncover. And that's what I've been doing throughout this pandemic. So it's always come from a place of inquisitiveness. At times there is humor that is incorporated. I try to be lighthearted about that because I do believe levity is important. But it's about searching for answers as opposed to reaching conclusions and expecting people to adopt those. I do have opinions and conclusions, and I share that analysis, but there's no expectation that anyone ascribes to that. And I think everyone is a patchwork of different ideas and opinions, and conformity on every single issue, being in perfect lockstep, I believe that actually stifles progressive thought.
I think it's dangerous. I think it's downright dangerous. It gives people this idea that they're infallible, and we have that a lot now because we're polarized. It happens in activist circles on the right. It happens in activist circles on the left, where it is a very tricky thing now to try to navigate any type of waters where you want to have a conversation, because again, and we've talked about this so many times, if they hear keywords, like if someone says, and this is the example that we probably used when we've been on this podcast, where if someone says, I believe in free speech, there are people on the left that hear that phrase and think that person's a crazy right winger. And that person who thinks that is suffering from search engine optimization brain, where they hear a keyword and the rebuttal list automatically kicks in and it falls out of their cry hole, right? And that is a very dangerous place because, first of all, free speech is a bastion of left-wing progressive thinking. It was born on the campus of Berkeley. It is the most left-wing idea you can ever think of. When I was growing up and I was listening to hip-hop, and Two Live Crew were dragged in front of a Senate committee hearing because of the lyrics of their hip-hop music, it was staunch. It was Al Gore's wife, Tipper Gore, but it was also staunch Christian right-wingers that were trying to, ban speech, right? Like that's who was doing it. Now everything has flipped, where the left now want to ban not just speech, ban people from attending things in public if they agree with their politics. And that is another ends justify the means thing. I'm going to play another clip and we'll talk about it when we get back.
What do you mean?
Attention, everybody!
Dirty mind is going with it.
A man, Norman Price, was arrested yesterday for child pornography. A man, Norman Price, was invited by the convoy organizers in Winnipeg. He dressed as a teddy bear, and he was with the children at the convoy in Winnipeg. Actual pedophiles within the convoy.
We're not just
And these guys are here doing what? They don't care that they have actual pedophiles within their movement.
If you were to see that and didn't know the context, you would think she was a convoy organizer.
Unless you were listening carefully and not just sort of focusing on the yelling of pedophiles specifically, right? Absolutely. And you know, I don't see how, you know, just from an observer standpoint and understanding that the objectives, as explained by the performer herself and the venue host, like they wanted to create a safe and welcoming environment for children and families. So I don't think that yelling pedophile outside the event, where the main point of the protesters, or what they're trying to make as a point, is sort of that this is a grooming activity, right? That's a common sort of explanation why they attend. Screaming about pedophiles, I don't see how that doesn't reinforce the idea. It becomes sort of a whataboutism. It's not really a rebuttal, and again, it doesn't make families feel safe. So it's
No,
just
I mean,
bizarre.
if my kid is going to a story time and that lady is yelling, "There's pedophiles and child pornography," I'm just like plugging my kid's ears and being like, "Get away from us, you awful lady!" Right? I'd probably try to find a way to kettle her. No, I wouldn't do that. But you know, there has to be some sort of like behavioral check in place. Like you can't just be like, "Well, I support the right cause, so I can be a complete." Like, this lady is clearly unhinged. I don't know if it feels like maybe I shouldn't well, I got to play the megaphone clip many more times because I thought that was just amazing. But I mean, I guess this is normal. Maybe
I'm yelling at teenagers, right? Because the Save Canada protesters were the main ones who showed up. They range between 16 to 18, and they had a couple of adults with them. And you know, I understand why people are concerned about that as a trend and how it is perceived, given some of what motivates them. But as you say, if you just think your cause is right, it doesn't sort of open the door to any kind of playbook. I think that it lowers the discourse.
I think it does too. Okay, let's get back to more clips. Can you describe what we're seeing here, actually?
Yeah. So the person with the yellow sign is from a local church. And here my cameraman's trying to get a clear image of what's on the sign, but it's being blocked by the other individual who I believe is a supporter of drag story time. The idea that, you know, harmful messaging is shielded from view, so parents and kids going in don't see it. I guess neither the street nor my cameraman. But the focus for this was not the actual individual blocking. As you can see, there's no zooming in on the face. Like it's looking to see what that sign says. And then very abruptly just...
So wait, hold on. What does it say? Jesus said that the little children come and then I don't know. I can't remember what it said. It's basically saying Jesus wants to protect the children from drag queens. It's something like that.
Something to that effect, yeah.
Yeah. But okay, so So for those that are watching on Spotify, there's a person holding a big banner in front of a person who is, I guess, anti drag queen story time. She's holding a placard that has a religious thing on it that supports her cause, right? And again, I'm gonna pause there for a second. There are people in that, and there are people watching that are like, "You should fucking block her," and I don't know why people don't understand that. First of all, the whole freedom of assembly, freedom of movement, the freedom to not be harassed has been all kind of like perverted in the last, that's a bad choice of words in this context, but it has been sort of distorted in the last little while. I don't know how many years, because again, the idea that you can't stand with a placard, it's not what it says on the placard. If it says die, N-words die, I can understand why people would want to block it. But this person just has a silly Bible verse. I'm an atheist, and I'm saying that this person should be allowed to stand there with their placard with the Bible verse. I may not agree with it. It's a Bible verse. Chances are I probably don't agree with it, but you can't stop a person from standing there. This idea that you can just block this person's placard is so fundamentally ridiculous to me. Like it reminds me of those people that don't want to hear someone speak in an auditorium, so they pull the fire alarm, or they come in there with speakers that drown out the speaker. This type of thing is fascism. It's very light. It's not like the violent, Nazi kind of fascism. But the idea that your voice should drown out other people's voice is not conducive with free movement, free speech, free assembly. It's these people are trying to disrupt that. And there's a comment there that says, I assume this person's talking about me, but he's talking about one woman over all these convoy players. So since we are talking about what happened at this library and not the macrocosmic political situation in this country, were there convoy protesters there? Even if you included this one, was there any violence among the convoy protesters or the people protesting the drag queen story time?
I wasn't keeping an eye on the protesters the entire time. It sounds like there was at some point something described as an assault. They claim it happened to them. The protesters say that they were attacked. The opposite was claimed by the opposite side. I didn't see it, so I can't speak to it.
Okay. But from your experience covering the convoy, where the exact same type of behavior from convoy protesters was also exhibited, maybe not the exact, but just as inflammatory, just as hyperbolic, just as invasive, which is another point that I think is worth making, is that I'm sorry, really hardcore progressives and self-proclaimed mega socialists and all those people, the closest demographic to you are the mega convoy protesters, because there is just as much certainty of being right that they have on their side, and it impacts the way that they behave. The worst of the convoy protesters are basically like that woman that smashed that other person in the face with the megaphone. That's why I think a lot of people, when they see a clip like that, they probably think that that person doing that was a convoy protester. And so I don't know, I don't know how many times we can sort of belabor that point, but I think it's important, because there's people in the comments that I'm seeing still that seem to be oblivious to the idea that, it's like having a bad girlfriend or boyfriend that can't ever admit when they do something wrong, right? Because they're so sure that their resentment for their partner is just so strong and valid that it can excuse almost anything that comes out of their mouth, or any type of behavior or cheating or whatever it is that they end up doing. And that is such a dangerous, toxic way to live. So I just wanted to point that out, because I think it's worth pointing out. I'm going to go to the next clip now. And I think this clip that I'm about to show is actually, oh no, I think it's when you were being interviewed.
One, no?
What's that?
Can you continue that one that we were just watching?
Oh, does it get better?
Yes.
Okay. Hold on a second. This one, right? It's this one, right?
No, not that one.
No,
the one with
Jesus
the
Christ.
sign. Sorry.
Oh God.
With the sign.
That woman's voice is just. Am I allowed to say hysterical, or is that considered?
No, I think
misogynistic?
I think we've abolish hysterical, but you know,
Oh, yeah.
screechy.
See, listen.
I don't know, screechy. Okay.
What if it was hysterical? Like literally, if you looked up the word, you know. Anyways. I'm gonna fast forward it to where we
fast
left off.
forward to where we left off.
Me.
Okay.
Okay, there you go.
So for the people at home, this protester carrying the Jesus placard is being, I would say, harassed. Her freedom of movement is sort of being impacted. She's being blocked so that cars that drive by can't see her Jesus placard. Now there's a person stepping in front of Karima's camera, so she can't film this whole block. This snookering the camera and snookering the protester thing seems to be quite a popular tactic.
Yeah. So that's my cameraman who's actually recording this clip. And so the individual who just popped up had, as soon as they arrived, kind of started following us.
Jesus. Me.
And then momentarily, we're about to see Megaphone Lady across the street. And the reason that I wanted to just continue this clip is because it comes up in something else that we will see. So this is the perspective from our viewpoint, right? That's another.
Who's that guy again? That's that Joe guy, right?
That's that Joe guy. So he
Yes.
traveled up with them.
He was on my show once, I think. Like, someone in the chat remind me if that's the dude that was in Casual Friday and basically, I don't know, called me a transphobe or something. I think it
Got
is.
ejected.
Anyways.
Right, so you see him pass because, and then you see across the street, Megaphone Lady. Right? So what I understand to be happening here, this guy, Sam, he actually made the front page of the Ottawa Citizen when there was that bridge where St. Bridget's, the church that convoy adjacent people rented, were going to purchase, but then they were squatting, and it was this whole thing over the summer. So he got on the front page for ending up in a headlock with the organizer there, like the lead church dude, William Comer. I don't know what his title was, King. And so what I think was happening in that clip is that he was trying to agitate my cameraman into reacting in some sort of aggressive way. That is absolutely not our MO. We've been doing rallies for a very long time and have pretty strict rules of engagement that we adhere to. And that includes, never initiating violence and avoiding it at all costs, regardless of who is against us. But I think that his goal was to end up in a headlock or something to that effect. And Joe and Dina would have captured the scene, and there is proof that Karima is a bad guy. And so that obviously that plan didn't succeed. But clearly you can tell by their positioning, by the ways that they talk about me in the lead up to events, the ways they strategize, that is the goal. And that is a coordinated form of harassment or conspiracy, just to be clear.
Because it's because you're a glitch to them. It's because they really can't unearth evidence that says that you're a fascist or a Nazi. But they know that you're not them. So therefore you're a fascist and a Nazi, right? You can only be one or the other.
Worse than sort of the fascists or Nazis who they're ostensibly there to really oppose. And worse because somehow I'm a traitor on top of everything else, despite not doing anything that warrants it. So it's complete bad faith interpretations, misrepresentations, misinformation. It's smears. It's very sick.
Yeah. Here's another clip. This one's interesting.
So that I was interested. Are you concerned at all that your presence here?
Can you tell me who the guy is on the left?
So he is a reporter with Trent Arthur, I believe is the name of the publication. I think his name is
Is that the university publication?
I think he's like a student journalist. I don't know.
Okay.
Sorry, Sebastian, not Simon. My apologies. And actually, it turns out that he is friendly with Danny Taro, who we were mentioning before. So it kind of explains the question you're about to hear, I think.
Okay.
Detract from the overall message.
And that's like, do you think your presence here detracts from the overall message?
Yes.
See, that's another stupid question.
Yes.
Okay. If this if he's a student in journalism school, I question how much he listens to the profs, or I just question the profs, because if they taught him that a viable question is, what do you think your presence here is doing? Really, what that question says to me is this: don't you know that the people that are standing on this side of the street get completely unhinged when they see you, and because of that, do you think you should be here? That's basically the way he should word the question, but here we go.
We're focused on the program.
I mean, it's a hard thing to kind of gauge, right? Because does that mean I need to stay home because other people can't behave themselves? And I don't think so. But I am doing my best to be unobtrusive and to do what I do, which is document and then share my views. There's no agenda, I guess. I mean, apart from the agenda of wanting to show people what's going on from my perspective, and that has value. Whether people agree with it or not. Many voices that are
And there's megaphone lady.
Yeah. And take note that she's talking to somebody right now, because I think that'll come up.
That's for sure.
Who is she talking to?
She's talking to another counter protester. We'll hopefully get to that clip in her footage.
Hey, Samuel.
But as you can, I don't know if we missed it. This guy was just like heckling from the side. The idea that I have a unique perspective, and for some reason that was fun.
Yeah.
I've noticed that.
And like I've been in camera phone standoffs with convoy people, with Mr. Freedom, with Queen Romana Didulo, like all sorts of individuals. So I'm not one to back down from that. And anyone who's been watching my work and footage would know that. So there are, as I said, rules of engagement. And I don't think that filming someone who is filming you in particular, but even generally in a public space, at a public event where they are participating as they are participants in this, that's a matter of public interest.
Yeah, I've asked several people that give you a hard time. I'm like, can you send me a clip or a quote that shows like her harassing or abusing someone? And they never do. It's just your presence. Become like, what is that? Like your presence itself is the agitation.
I had someone
Like, you
admit
could-
that explicitly, actually, in Ottawa. He said,
Well, Danny did. Danny Taro.
"Oh yeah, he did as
too.
well." At least they're honest, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, they're honestly stupid. Come on. And by the way, I said this about the convoy people too. And the reason why I feel like I have to say that is because if I say, wow, these socialists and by the way, some socialists are great, but these are self-described often like socialists and anti-fascists and everything. The ones that are the most vocal, it's just like it is on the MAGA convoy side, are the ones that really have a problem with people going where they're going. And it's weird because it's almost like the bastard child of what we saw in the States when Proud Boys and Antifa used to go to fucking county fairs and fight or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like that was happening like in 2020, 2021. That was happening all the time. Proud Boys would go and like protest or whatever it was that they were doing. And then a counter protest would come comprised of like so-called Antifa, and then violence would erupt. And I'm always the person that says that it often is the second group that arrives that tends to spark the violence. And notice that I just said the second group. Sometimes the Antifa was the first group. Sometimes Proud Boys was the first group. Sometimes Antifa was the second. Sometimes whoever's second in usually is the one that ends up sparking violence because they are not, and both sides do this. And I don't care if people get perturbed because I said both sides. Oh, he's both sides. Yeah, I guess so in this case, because the idea of a counter protest, first of all, is only something that I think is worthwhile if you notice from your balcony that a large group of men and women have weapons or are about to attack somebody. Okay, sure, then bring another gang down there and deal with it until the cops come or something. But oftentimes it's like, say Proud Boys are out protesting, I don't know, fucking the legislator in Nebraska because they allowed gay marriage or something like that. It doesn't make any sense to me to bring your own group down there to combat the people that want traditional marriage. Not because traditional marriage is the right answer in anything, but because these people are allowed to go and stand there and protest. Protesting a protest that is nonviolent is provocative, and it doesn't matter who's doing it first or second. And if it does matter to you who's doing it first or second, you are part of the problem. Because, someone else said it, Jen Waddell in the comments, if you're not ready to fight vigorously, and I'm paraphrasing, the speech that you don't like, then you don't believe in free speech. You just don't.
It demonstrates, I think, a lack of courage of conviction if you need to suppress rather than create and counter with alternative ideas. And part of the reason I feel that way is because, I have family and friends who live in or come from countries where that isn't an option. And so the value of free speech, I think, is something like many rights and privileges that gets taken for granted until it is too late. And I don't like the trends that we see, and that's why I take the positions that I do. It's not an endorsement of political views that are, completely diametrically opposed to mine. But the notion of speech, and we can have, I think, conversations about at what point is protest too disruptive, and at what point is it a safety issue, and how do we deal with hateful discourse, right? That causes actual harm, and how do we measure that? And those are all important questions, but I don't know that it's really being addressed in sort of the simplistic way that you described, where, and especially if some of the people counter protesting an event have ulterior motives.
Yeah, it just doesn't do anyone good, any good to focus not on the issue but on the actual person holding the placard. Like the placard thing is a really good example, because in the same thing, I made the same point when you were here last time, and we were talking about how you were. I called it being kettled. It was kettled light, but it was still kettled. They were blocking your movement, and there were teams of people blocking your movement from all sides. That is literally the definition of kettling. It just that you weren't. They weren't wearing police outfits with batons and shields. But the idea that that when you go to a protest like this, that if a placard says Jesus said, no fucking drag queen, storytellers or whatever, it's so irrelevant what it says on that sign. If that sign said yes to drag queen story time, it wouldn't be okay to block the sign. It is not about what's written on the sign. It's about blocking it. There are very few exceptions. I'm going to kill you, John Smith. Might want to block that one. Right? Like, whatever. Just, I really want to do bad things to kids. Yeah, you probably want to fucking block that one. But if it's just some innocuous, stupid Bible verse, what are you afraid of? And again, that person has the right to stand there with their placard. If you start, what is that? There's a philosophical, it was like a viral video from like a decade ago or something, when they're talking about God existing, and how it was like an atheist thing, and how, well, who created God? Well, obviously there must be an answer that's omnipotent. Well, who created that God? Well, who created that God? Well, who created that God? Like, and it just goes on forever. It's the same thing with these blocking things. Like, well, what if you block the person that's blocking? Well, what if you block the person that's blocking the person that's blocking the person that holds on the sign? Like, you can just go forever. eventually you have to come to the conclusion that maybe blocking the sign is not a good idea. You know, like maybe
And
it
there are
causes a lot of things.
There are other tactics, and okay, fine, we can disagree on approach and strategy. But you know, when you are trying to suppress, that is an act of aggression. Suppression is an act of aggression, and own it. If that's the route, own it.
There was a hockey player, and I've had him on the show, named Sean Avery. And they had to invent a rule in hockey called the Avery rule, the Sean Avery rule, because he would stand in front of the goalie and he would take his stick and he would put it in front of the goalie's face and just be a pest in front of the net. And eventually they decided that was unsportsmanlike conduct, and they created what's known as the Sean Avery rule. That reminds me of that banner, and you know what I mean? Like that you're just being a pest. You're not helping, you're agitating. And again, you think that you're doing something that's good because you're so confident that you're on the right side of history that you forgot that you didn't remember that it's not about being on the right side of history. It's just not. We used to see stuff like this in the abortion debate, but you know, like they politicize kids, the far Christian right or whatever. They politicize kids in those protests by making them hold placards of fetuses. I strongly disagree with that, but I disagree more with putting a person in front of that kid, blocking him with a banner. I just do, you know, like it's just, it's not about the issue for me. It could be an issue that I care about more than anything in the whole wide world. If there's nothing on that card, that placard that's advocating death or racism or something like that, if it's a stupid Bible verse, who cares? You know, like by letting that bother you, I don't know, you're proving something very weird. Okay, here's another clip, and we'll come back.
Right there on the flag. Right?
Yeah. Good for you.
I always love it when you sort of dance like you're at a dance and you're just waiting for someone to come in. Who's Betty, by the way?
Betty is the performer at the Peterborough Drag Storytime.
Oh, fuck you. You're wearing you're actually supporting the drag queen storyteller.
I actually really like Betty. Ordinarily, I am not there taking stances. In this particular case, I think it's fairly clear cut. And I think that when abstract issues are raised and it manifests outside a specific local event, and there's no real connection between the abstract issues and that, I felt okay wearing a pin.
Okay. Did anyone know that?
I don't know.
that was giving you a hard time?
It was right there. Probably, yeah. I don't know if, mind you, I did a full interview with Betty, and we had a great back and forth and rapport and all that. And I was apparently faking it and pretending, because I am actually in my heart of hearts a transphobe, even though this is not a trans related issue. This is a drag situation. So I'm disingenuous.
Yeah. Can you explain that for people that, because even though drag queens and transgender people are not necessarily the same, I think sometimes they are, though, because there's all these different layers of different types of people. But it's technically not a trans issue at all, but it's been picked up by them as an issue that the transgender community and activists support, though. Like they have some. It's almost like a drag queen is like a cousin of a transgender person or something, to put it in like a weird way. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's some overlap in the same critics. They have the same critics.
Yeah, drag can be part of a journey towards transitioning. It may not be, but you know, it is in all situations about costuming and performance. Like that's sort of the underlying art forms there. And so the conflation with trans issues, it happens in part because, as I mentioned, the origins of Drag Storytime, there was that intentionality behind it of representation in age appropriate ways. And I think also because like the the shows and performances. I hope I'm not an expert in it, but I understand that drag it may or may not be part of a larger journey, but that's not what the story time focusing on the costume.
Okay. So the rest of this clip is just that same guy again. And he's he's surveilling you and whatever. And the other what's the girl's name that hit the person with the megaphone? What's her name again? Dina. Okay. Dina talks about him when she's surveilling you. And I'm going to kind of play like some of that, but not all of that because it's like 25 minutes long. But I'm going to try to play the parts that are relevant. I'm just going to let the first 2 minutes play. And I'm going to do it on full screen, so we're not going to comment for the first couple minutes, and then we'll be right back.
Hey guys, Dina Sharif here, and I'm at the Peterborough Library, Public Library for Drag Story Time. Some people showing up. We only have 2 fascists here so far. You're looking at them. A little bit further away. Just a couple of police here so far. I think some of the fascists are on the other side, down there, down the way. You can maybe see them below that sign. I can kind of... Oh, we got a camera war between Howard Lee Mattis filming Sam. Just keep it.
So I just want to stop it there. So what is she doing? What is she accomplishing by standing there and just filming you? I guess she thinks it's covertly, but she has like 3 crew members. Like you know who acts like this? Rebel News. They do. When they went to Davos, they had like a team of ambushers that would like ambush the same people. And then Ezra Levant would get too winded as he was walking with with people. So they'd hand it off to that Aussie guy and he'd take over, and it was like, it just, first of all, it seemed, I've never seen it like done like that before, but this is such amateur hour stuff. And they don't really seem to have a purpose, and they snicker. And don't forget that the person that's filming you to make sure that you behave was the woman that clocked that person with the megaphone. Like the person who has violent tendencies, the person who sang profanity-laced songs in front of the other protesters with her daughter sitting right there. This is an ends justifies the means kind of thing. That's all I'm seeing. Are you seeing the same thing?
That's exactly what it is.
Let's not even play the rest of the clip. I think we got an idea who this person is. Let's just talk now. Let's just talk, because I know that you want to play it.
Just one part of the clip that I want to.
The Taylor Swift part.
No. Although I do love Taylor Swift, so I appreciated that. I really do. Hang on, I'm gonna tell you where.
They don't have I don't have a time code ability on this, so you tell me if it's near the middle.
Oh, okay. Hold on. You have the whole video loaded up, right?
Yeah. Let's so I can do this.
Just gonna move over here so we can keep it on.
And you can tell me where to go.
Okay, so it's about 15 minutes in to the 25-minute video. So it's like this guy crosses the street, and when the guy crosses the street, I hope that helps. I don't know. Let's see.
I don't know if that helps, to be honest. That guy?
Hang on. He's going to come across. If we don't find it, we don't find it. But the reason I wanted to show this is because it's the perfect example of what happens either in real life or, online especially, and often laundered through anonymous accounts. But the the act of smearing and of poisoning a stranger against another stranger with just total lies and fabrications. We'll see him cross over. It's like I said, 15 minutes in, so like 2/3, I guess.
Yeah. We'll take your word for it.
Okay. But,
Because honestly, like it's
Yeah,
it's
that's
one of those things. Yeah, and you can find that. Kareem, if you can put the clip in the private chat and then, or even in the actual chat overlay, one or the other, and I'll make sure that people can see it so they can take a look at the whole video themselves. But a violent, unhinged woman making sure that you behave is hilarious to me. And the fact that you were there and were actually supporting the drag queen story time that was happening is the most delicious irony I can even think of.
and not just that, but like I said, I was able to speak with all the relevant authorities in that community, whereas I had been told that I was unwelcome by the community. That turns out not to be the case. And it's just an example of how the concept of community is this very amorphous term, and it becomes a vessel for arbitrary power and power that you can't even argue with or disagree. And I think that's really problematic. The Canadian Anti-Hate Network, prior to the last drag event and prior to this one as well, put out a call to ice out fake journalists. And if anyone follows the online discourse, and disturbingly, it often centers around me and how I am a fake journalist and I am a fake lawyer and I am, pretending to be all of these things. The call to ice someone out at the initial show and some of the drag story times prior to that resulted in physical and verbal harassment of me. And the organization's been silent on that, even though these are people who ostensibly are supporters. One of them wrote for them, right? Like, and just no word on the fact that, hey, we didn't mean harass Karima. Please desist, or come out and say it with your chest. Yeah, we mean Karima, and then let's talk about that, because I don't do anything that would kind of put me in that camp, and it's really disturbing. And they live stream their crimes, which is another similarity to the convoy.
Sorry, what was that? What's the similarity?
She's live streaming herself, clearly surveilling me.
Yeah, and she would probably say something like, oh, "What is it that you do?" And the only point that she would really have is that you're both there with cameras pointing at that stuff, but she is stating while she's doing it that she's there to surveil you. like if you're documenting Karima, I mean, even that is a little weird. Like you don't usually go to places, you yourself, and just go across the street and be like, I'm going to make sure that Randy across the street is behaving himself. Like, that would be weird, and people would have the right to call you out for that.
There's characters who it's like, okay, well, let's see what so-and-so is up to. And there are times where I've been attending Chris Guy rallies, but that's a little bit less bizarre because he actually is the focal point of the rally. I very much am not. And, prefer, my favorite footage is what we get where I'm fly on the wall. And that's not always possible if I'm made to be a character as well. And then that gets reciprocated. So it's not rocket science. But this level of arrogance and assuming that I'm there exclusively for them, to thwart them, it is all projection. And, my work requires my path to be clear, and I will not accept barricades, whether, it's posed online or physically in my path. I just will go through them or above them.
Yeah. Listen, I don't believe that there's a violent bone in your body. I don't believe that you're there for any ill intent. It's just, I think it's honestly like people, if I may just, stop, being a little bit too hyperbolic about how I'm describing these people. I think ultimately, and I know this is going to sound condescending and stuff, but like, I think they're just a little confused. I think they don't quite know how to compute the idea that if you're not there for them, how can you not be the enemy? Right? I think it's as simple as that. Like, you don't have to be waving a Diagolon flag. You don't have to be waving a Nazi flag. You don't have to be not wearing a button that shows that you actually support the drag queen story time. I can't stress that enough. It's not enough. It's not enough because you're not one of them. You're not down with them, and so you can't do it in any other way if you're not doing it like them. It's terribly narcissistic, and it's really kind of it's just fucking bizarre. Like how can they not see how closely matched they are to the convoy protester? You guys are the same. If this was a video game, you guys would have equal power, equal skills, equal weapons. Right? You both have the cheat code in Contra. You still got the same amount of men. Like this is. I find it very.
It's about control. That's what it is, right? It's people who often, I think, don't have real control in their own lives and look to exert it in ways and places and spaces that they can. And being part of an in-group is a pathway to that. And okay, if that means denying what I see with my eyes and hear with my ears and know with my heart, that's fine, because I'm going to be part of the clique. And I think that's an element of it. So there's malice 100%, but I think there's a lot more ignorance and just sort of cowardice where you go with the bandwagon because that's easiest. And I am a very easy target to dunk on if you don't know anything about me, right? If
and
just
dunk on
looks, I'm an easy target.
or get hit with a
Were
megaphone.
on display.
Hey, come here.
Those divisions were on display.
Hey, come
These were on display.
Hey, come here.
On display.
Hey,
On display.
come here.
A counter-protester clashed with a member of the
I
Freedom
just can't get enough of that clip. It's so funny. I would love to find out who that person is. I just
It was I forget the name actually. I think that the name had come up somewhere, but it's moot. But it another thing just sort of I'm seeing pop up, the idea that my footage is edited and inaccurate and misleading. I don't know, man. It's just good. So if it tells a story, it's because I'm using video to tell stories. Like, that is the purpose. It's not just a stream of consciousness. Here is the entirety of my time. There is absolutely an editorial aspect to any form of journalism, and in particular, the work that I do. Sometimes I am part of that story, and that's just my prerogative because I post it on my Twitter. So I don't understand what the problem is.
Well, listen. There's the only problem is that you're not subscribing and falling neatly into polarization designated boxes, and that is literally the best thing about you. So I think we'll wrap it up there because I think otherwise we'll be laboring
We
the point.
can do this forever. I
was almost going to play the megaphone lady again, but maybe I'm also milking that a little bit too. But it's great. I think I'm just going to keep that as like a casual Friday clip that I'm just going to show all the time.
Make good use of it. Yeah, no, it's I'm just like, this motivates me. Is another thing. I want to end on that. This motivates me to be better, to do better, to try new things. I am running again for bencher with the Law Society of Ontario, in part because dealing with this constant pressure really makes me feel equipped to tackle new challenges. So for that, I owe a thank you. But, if I were to leave on a word, it would be stop, because it doesn't get better for you from here. And I will take formal routes. So cut it out. Well,
listen, I wish you the best. I think you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. I think it's perfect. In a way, they're playing kind of into your hands in the sense, not that you want them to do this, but it's like, why are you documenting this, right? Like your document is to show what's really happening. And that's what's really happening is that, sometimes people that want to defend something that they feel is perfectly fine, and they could be right about it being perfectly fine, act like assholes. Right? That's what happens. And it's not okay to act like an asshole if just because you think that the thing that you're defending is perfectly fine. So, listen, take care of yourself, and we'll talk again, I'm sure, sometime really soon.
Thank you for setting this up, James.
No problem. Thanks, Karima. You have a good night.
Bye.
Bye. Kareem Assad. Yeah. I love the comments tonight. James, you're so full of shit. Yeah, well, fuck you, It's my show. I'm allowed to be full of shit. I don't think I was full of shit, but Karima is a glitch in the journalistic matrix, I would say, or whatever you want to call that, the political matrix, by not subscribing to polarization. And so she draws the ire of the far right, and we saw that for like a year and a half when she was covering convoy people who acted exactly like those people did. And yeah, it has nothing to do with the issue. Really, the issue is secondary. It's not. If someone is holding up a placard that you don't like, don't block them. Now you're the dick. It's just. It's not indicative of democracy. It's just like it is. It's not fascism either. But trying to prevent someone from expressing themselves, what they are expressing, isn't harmful to other people unless you are a person who's so delicate that you can't take the word Jesus on a placard. Jesus said such and such. Oh my God, we have to block that sign so no one knows the existence of Jesus or something. You guys are really confused. So I think it should give a lot of people a lot to think about, especially if you support that kind of shit, the kind of actions where if Karima, when she was at the last one and she was walking away from people and they trailed her, and then 6 people had banners that they put in front of her and blocked her from all sides. If those flags didn't say we support drag queen storytime, and those flags said Diagolon instead, every last one of you fucking hypocrites would be right there saying that is harmful, that is violent. And so it's really not, you guys aren't principled. It's not really the principle that's guiding you. It's the hypocrisy. So I really think that you guys should check yourself. And we'll see you next time on Blackball.
Blackmore. 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 Blackmore.